Welcome to the Beat It with Joe podcast. Joe Mountford is your host today, and we're diving deep into the crucial topic of mental health in the world of sports. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or a dedicated support staff member, your well-being matters just as much as your performance. Joe is an Advanced Gazing Red2Blue coach, Gallup strengths coach, psychotherapist, and mindfulness coach. She is here to explore how we can elevate player wellness together. Joe believes that mental health is the cornerstone of high performance. If you're eager to learn more about the Beat It with Joe Player Wellness Program, which equips you with tools to perform under pressure, discover your strengths, and become the best version of yourself, don't hesitate to reach out. Make sure to subscribe to stay updated on all our latest episodes. This podcast is absolutely free, but you can show your support by subscribing to the Beat It with Joe YouTube channel. Your engagement helps us spread the message of wellness far and wide, so share us on your social media platforms. Today, we'd like to introduce our special guest, Glen Fisher. Glen is an Advanced Gazing Red2Blue coach with 22 years of experience in sustainable high-performance coaching, working with elite athletes, business professionals, and entrepreneurs. Based in Brisbane, Australia, Glen brings a wealth of knowledge and insight. In this episode, we'll discuss Glen's work with the Olympic athlete Elijah Winnington and how Glen's mindset techniques helped elevate Elijah's performance from the Tokyo Olympics to the Paris Olympics in 2024. So let's jump right in and unpack the vital role of mental health in athletes with Glen Fisher.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I've got a special guest all the way from Brisbane, Australia, and it is Glen Fisher. Glen and I met in London a few months ago at our Gazing Red2Blue advanced coaching training. And Glen and I have some similar interests and business interests, and just recently we've both had the privilege of working with Olympic athletes. So welcome, Glen, and I'd love you to just share a bit more about what you do, and I'd like you to introduce your athlete and also talk about the coaches that you've worked with. It's a really great story, and it really brings Red2Blue in great light and how it's used at its best.
Well, first of all, thank you, Joe, for having me on the podcast, and g'day to everyone from sunny Australia. I have a mix of clientele in my business. I work with executives in the corporate space, but I also work with some athletes, and one of my favorite group of athletes is with a swim team, an elite swim team up here in Brisbane, the St. Peter's Western Swim Club. Many people know the head coach out at St. Peter's as the crazy guy from the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, Dean Boxall, the guy who shook the railings after Ariane Titmus defeated Katie Ledecky in the 400 freestyle event in the women's. It was a big deal, upsetting one of the legends of the sport. But Elijah Winnington also debuted at that particular Olympics, and Elijah and I met after those Olympics in particular. But we can talk more about that later on because Elijah went into those Olympics as world number one, but didn't live up to his own expectations at that particular performance. And then we ended up working together after the Olympics to do some mindset work and something that he'd never done. Even as a world number one, he'd never done any mindset work before. And so such a pleasure to be here, and look forward to this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Glen. Glen, if we can just share with the audience, as I said, in our Gazing Red2Blue, some people don't understand what it is and what we do, but it's a mindset tool that helps people, any people, but we're working with pressure specifically, helps people perform under pressure so that they are focused and in the moment, and they're able to eliminate the past, the future, and they're completely in the zone and on task. Would you say that, just as a summary, that's that's pretty much what Red2Blue is.
Yeah, it's a really great tool, Joe. I think, as you already know, I think we often refer to it as a mindset tool, and yet I think that almost we can say those things really, really easily, but not put the gravity to what does that actually mean? Because I think it is a mindset tool, and in that a tool has a structure to help you affect something to happen, to take you forward, move you forward. So it's got the structures in the tools for the mindset, but it's also the skill of controlling that mindset, or how to deal with the mindset, and I guess the mind chatter that goes on that we all experience on a day-to-day basis. So I guess your point towards pressure, something we refer to, one way we look at pressure here with my clients, my athletes, is we talk about pressure as the rapids of reality, because pressure is just a constant. And how do we deal with that, the constant of the rapids that we're having to navigate on a day-to-day basis, whether it's, coming home from work and then dealing with our life finances or our children, or, we have to turn up to training again after this morning's bad session. What are those rapids and how do we deal with it? So what are the pressure that's on a day-to-day constant as well? So yeah, it is a great mindset tool, accompanied with some structures and some recommendations on how to build those mindset skills. That's how I look at it.
Exactly. Some tools for pre-performance, performance, and post-performance, which is amazing. I mean, I know we had a meeting the other day, and one of the questions was, do you use your Red2Blue as part of the work that you do, or how do you include it? And my answer was, I include it in every single thing that I do. I include it in parenting. I include it in my relationship. I include it in the therapy work that I do. And then I include it in teams, in individuals, everything. It comes in because there's such a buzzword at the moment called mindfulness. And I think the Gazing Red2Blue approach, it's without using the word mindfulness. It is mindfulness that helps us be in the present. It is mindfulness of being aware of how our history has affected us, helped or hindered us, and then what do we do with that, and how do we let it go, and all of that. So I think mindfulness is a buzzword, and this is very much used subconsciously using this tool. So I know people like stories, and you've got a great story, and I've also got a great story to tell. So let's dive into the recent Olympics. And let's use the history of Elijah. Like, how did he either let go of how did you help him either let go of his history, or did he bring the whole cart into the next Paris Olympics? That would be interesting for people to start understanding maybe what Gazing Red2Blue is and how it's used, coach, swimmer relationship.
It's I love what you just said then, and I'll try and link these things together. When I met Elijah, he was post-Tokyo. So his performance, or his world was anchored in that performance where he came 7th in the 400-meter freestyle for men, rated as #1 in the world. It's one of the fastest time in the year heading into the Olympics. And your reference then just before around mindfulness was, about being in the moment. Well, are there times when being in the moment, or we can overdo that? In Elijah's case, I think he was certainly in a moment prior to the Olympics that had a bad or an unproductive data point that got stuck in his head, where he was swimming times that he was technically slower than, say, 4 weeks earlier. And he got stuck on that particular moment. So talk about mindfulness taken to an extreme. He couldn't let go of that moment. If we go back to, the Olympics of 2021, fast forward, how are we going to get ready for the Paris Olympics in 2024? when he had an emotional scar from the Tokyo Olympics, because it was something that he was hanging on to. In fact, he'd seen a few different people before he kind of joined me with thinking about Red2Blue. And in his words, nobody could really get a breakthrough for getting unstuck. And it was a matter of
trying. I like that.
Yeah, it was really trying to define, what do you mean by getting stuck? So we have this little saying that's about getting ready to be ready. And so, dealing with athletes, we're often talking about performance, and certainly with corporate clients, we're often talking about performance. So we're trying to understand, well, what is this thing called performance? And the first thing we did is just, we really dumbed it down, Joe. We just said, there's a belief we have that the human is greater than the athlete. So you're a person first and you're a swimmer second. That's one of the roles you play. And I guess what we're doing there is beginning to start using the Red2Blue tools even before we start talking about them. Meaning, let's zoom out from this one role that you have as a swimmer, and let's zoom out on Elijah Winnington, the person, and understand the various roles that you play, that you're trying to perform in, and understand that there are more than just this one component of your world that you're hanging on to. So that's where we started the adventure, is really trying to break it down and not be fixated on one of his roles, was to really, jump in a hot air balloon and start to rise up from the landscape a little bit and understand that there's been this big story of success and different trials and different tribulations and different rapids and different pressures that have happened throughout his life. And at that point, he was 21 or thereabouts.
And expectations, Glen.
Yeah.
And expectations, yeah.
Yeah, and trying to understand, let's break this thing called pressure down, and what does that mean? And, why are you hanging on to this so tightly? What's it actually giving you? How is it serving you? Is that serving you well, or is it really disrupting your way to move forward? And again, so trying to understand, what are you looking to do? You're looking to move forward? Yes. Okay, let's figure out the different skills of how do we start to let go of these different things one by one, and use various tools and techniques to kind of help that process. Yeah. I've got to share with you that.
Can I just, before you share with me, I just think it's important that the audience understand that our job is not to eliminate the pressure, because pressure exists and it's not going away. It's very much about just acknowledging that it does exist. And then what do we do next? Like, what is our next thing? How do we refocus our attention onto something else? But please bring your share. Yeah.
Well, I think that's exactly where I was going to go, Joe, is, when we're able to kind of zoom out and look at the whole landscape, look at the whole map, and say, well, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do to move forward? Or, sorry, what does moving forward look like in your future? And you understand that you do want to move forward. Then the next logical question is, well, can you see a time when this pressure or these expectations that you are creating for yourself are going to disappear? And to your point, that was the realization that Elijah had was, well, no, I want these things. I want to go to another Olympics. I want to hit the medal dais. I would like to, maybe get a world record or swim faster than I currently am swimming. So all of these things, as you said, we can put a label to those things of, these are the expectations that we are creating for ourselves, or potentially others are creating for us, which is a whole nother story. But it's kind of, if we're looking at Elijah, the human first, well, what expectations do you have for yourself that you design, that you want to go after? Not Glen, the coach. That's my job, is to see if we can help, untangle anywhere where we get our feet stuck or our mind stuck, if you like. But it's, what are those expectations that you like, and Do you understand why you'd like them? What's it going to give you if you can achieve these different things? And I think
Okay,
that's
so
where
so then if I
human
ask
kind of
you,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, the human thing, and I think you said something earlier, which I think we could do a whole different podcast on the different roles. And I say often our life is like a pie, and it has different slices with different roles or different hats, or and then how do you walk to the pool deck and leave those behind if there's, because our life carries on with the highs
Yes.
and lows of it. Life carries on, but we can talk about that at another stage. So now, if we can maybe focus on, there was the Tokyo Olympics, and Glen didn't exist in Elijah's life. Then you entered his life, and then we just had the Paris. What were you able to help him do differently into Paris? What did he do differently? Because I would imagine his skills, his techniques, his all that type of thing would have been refining and on repeat, few changes here and there. But there was one element that changed, and that was what you did. Would you like to share not in detail, but like what was the difference?
Yeah, this is a really great point you raise. Even if I look at the beginning of the adventure, when we covered the various structures and various skills that we were going to look at, it wasn't as if everything changed overnight. A number of things made sense particularly quickly, but then mastering the skills that go with those things is something that, we worked on for 3 years leading up to the Paris Olympics. And I think, I guess in Elijah's own words, he would describe that adventure of understanding the things that he needed to do, but in the moment of performance, when he lined up on the blocks, that was the time then to get back on task, get into the blue space, to execute everything that he attached to that blue space, that blue mind. And he would be the first to tell you there were different times when, fear would creep in or doubt might creep in, and he would revert to old strategies if in the race he was under pressure. So the 3 years we used, I guess, as a set time that we agreed together was where we were going to experiment with the skills, the structures, and the mindsets, and then debrief, what we call hot wash. After every single major race or after training, we would debrief what were the insights that we gained and were we living more in the red or making decisions out of the blue. So over that 3 years, he was really learning to figure out where was he making his decisions from. And even if I cut right to the trials for the Australian swim team, he tried something where he went out after a world record because in training he was swimming the house down. He'd never swum faster in his whole life. He was training beautifully. And so he thought this little red thought, oh, let me go for a result, a world record, crept in, where he trusted in his ability to make the team, but he allowed a distraction to occur. And even though he won that particular race and made the team, he recognized the distraction of allowing that to come in didn't enable him to swim his perfect blue race.
Okay.
And it was a really nice learning that he took into Paris. So come Paris, he was really humble. He was just ready to have fun and really not overly focus on the result. Because another lesson, Joe, that he'd learnt through the process of experimenting with Red2Blue over those 3 years, he learnt to look at the data points when he had fun, when he was racing, is what he called his blue state. Right. So, and we came up with a few connection words like Disneyland. So Disney is the happiest place on earth, right? And that is one of his favorite places. In fact, he's heading there in a week or so's time.
Oh,
again.
wonderful.
But that's his happy place. And when he is just content, calm, confident, clear, and just enjoys the moment and what's there and how to make the most of it. So that was our code word, our blue word, if you like, was Disneyland. And he really embraced the privilege that is the Olympics through, the lead up to the race and even his heat. He just kept thinking about the most magical place on earth in Disneyland and just behind the blocks. That was his way of getting into the blue state, despite, maybe seeing some other famous people in the village and different things like that. He was able to keep coming back to that blue space. So being
okay,
ready
so you've said a few things there, and I need you to just like capture them before, because there's so many things we could, elaborate on. One of the things that you said is so relevant is, and I've had a few parents saying, my child is competing next week. Please, can you do red to blue with them to make a difference? And I think what you said is absolutely vitally important for people to understand, but it hasn't taken them a week to get to the level where they're at.
Yeah.
So why will the mindset be different? And so I think people need to understand, if you're training the mindset, you're training the mind. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes training. It's a skill that needs to be developed, tried, tested in pressure situations, etc. So I think key number one, that's vital. That is, there's no quick fix to training the mind. Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing you brought up, which I'd love for you to elaborate on, is the importance of the relationship between the coach and the athlete in speaking the same language. So if you, as the mindset coach, has a word like Disney, it's vital, do you agree, that the swimming coach or whatever coach it is speaking the same language? So it's not only important to train the athlete in the mindset way, it's also vital that the coach is acutely aware of when they see their client in the red, in the overwhelmed, in the distracted, in the anxious, whatever their stuck space is, and how to help the athlete get out of that space, get into the blue, in the zone as quickly as possible. Now, you have worked with Dean. Am I right? That's true. So how's that worked? How's that worked?
Yeah, this is the beauty, I think, of working with an elite coach that it has a two-way of trust going between the athletes and me as a mindset coach who's on the peripheral of the work he's doing day to day with the athletes. So yeah, that openness is right there. We discuss language quite a lot. We look at the language that I'm using with Elijah or the other swimmers. In fact, at the beginning of this season, we reiterated what does it mean to be in red and what does it mean to be in blue? Red is on task, blue is off, red is off task and blue is on task. And how do we incorporate that language into the session? How can he use questions to ask the athlete, where are they at? What are they feeling? What are they sensing? How can he build it into their debrief? And exactly the same with our code word Disney. From the get-go, when Elijah and I first, built that, the other word that we use in this space is kind of magic. And again, it's, Dean is kind of like the second uncle or the close uncle for most of these swimmers, or another parent. If the aunts and uncles and grandparents are all using the same language, espousing the same beliefs and values in broad terms, not specific, etc., but in broad terms, it's more likely as that athlete matures that they're going to be on the same wavelength. Just like a child, if mum and dad are living the same values and the grandparents and extended family and friends are living the same values, when we get into those turbulent teenage years, we're more likely to see those values surface in the independent athlete. As they're navigating that independent time of their life, we're more likely to see those values kind of start to pop through as they make their independent decisions. And one agreement that Dean and I have with all of the athletes is we are inputs into the process. You know, Elijah is swimming that race by himself for 3 minutes and 40 odd seconds or thereabouts. He has to make decisions in that pressure moment during those rapids, what to do in response to the racing conditions. Dean's not there. I'm not there. Nobody else is there. None of the other sports science coaches are there. So building that language is all about helping that athlete with their independent decisions when they're really in the heat of that performance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And I also think even vitally in their warm-up, if they're warming up and they're not cracking the times, like you were talking about Elijah not cracking the times, and then that becomes cemented in their mind. It's giving the power to the warm-up.
Yes.
And it's being able, it's the language that the coach can then talk, not elaborately, because often when you're stressed, it's just there's no penetration of information. So being able to speak the Red2Blue language as the coach at the warm-up, for example, if things are not going according to plan, to shift that person back into what I can do, what I'm setting out to achieve, is such a valuable tool.
Yeah. In fact, I can share a story, Joe, just before the final in Paris of the 400-meter freestyle. Dean and I had been exchanging texts, and we decided that the final, I guess, words were, it's just about getting the timing just right for that particular race. What does the main coach say to that athlete just before the big moment of kind of heading off to the marshalling area? And that's when Dean saved, his reference to let's go to the Magic Kingdom, to that last moment, when the nerves have been building up again after warm up, and just walking to that kind of main area. It was all right. Dean's got a limited amount of time to talk and engage with an athlete because he's got 9 other athletes at the Olympics to engage with. So,
and Glenn, he's also got maybe 2 that are competing in the same event.
In some situations that was the case in the girls, for sure. Yeah. So it's how to be efficient and how to ignite that spark that's already within Elijah. So having that language that kind of fits that space was just really powerful, just to be able to put it there, because those words, other people listen and they kind of go, oh, what does that mean? But because Elijah's done the work of adding meaning, feeling, emotion, so he's worked and conditioned his emotions and his mindset, even his physical self. He recognizes that his mind, his emotions are connected to his physiology. So he understands, the neurobiology of all of those things, how one word can then help you calm or
switch
lift.
It all on.
You switch it all on. Exactly right. So, that was a particularly powerful moment. So when Dan exchanged that with Elijah, that little smile that struck him, because it just came out of the blue. Elijah wasn't expecting it. And he just recognized that, hey, his team that is behind him and supporting him are all on the same page. And that just calmed Elijah down beautifully. He was in control. And the demons of Tokyo that we were cautious about, and we had done some what if scenarios, thinking about what if we get nervous by arriving at the Olympics again, because that was a pretty low time for him. That just didn't exist. It didn't happen. It wasn't reignited because his blue was just so bright, so strong, and so well conditioned. He was able to just forge on.
Oh, you described that so beautifully. Glenn, to finish the podcast, because it's such a great finish, how did the race end up for Elijah?
Well, if I look at his 400, we can talk about the result, and okay, he's silver medaled by 0.4 of a second, I think it was, another 10 meters, another 5 meters, he would have won the race. So, but his joy, even with the silver medal, was, worthy of Disneyland kind of performance. If I may quickly, Joe, just to give you a second story, because he swam in the final of the 800, a race that this is the first year that he's actually had a crack at the 800. He made the final, and that particular race didn't pan out as well as his world championship 800 meter race a few months earlier. But he had a relay swim about an hour later after the final of the 800 meters. Why do I share that story and kind of gloss over the silver medal performance of the 400? Because I actually think it was probably even a more powerful performance. Because his 800 didn't go according to his plan, he tried a similar plan at the World Championships in Doha earlier this year and knocked it out of the park with a silver medal in a race that he'd only swum for the first time at international meet. This year, in Paris, that didn't play out the same way. But his ability to let go in the warm down was phenomenal. So in the past, he would have hung on to that race and he would have been thinking about it over and over again in the warm down, even though he had a 4x200 meter swim coming up a relay. His skills, his blue skills to let go of that red moment were phenomenal, and then turned up into the 4x200. I think he swam a 145 low, was an outstanding 200 meter swim that, it would have ended up in the final of the 200 meters at the Olympics as well. So his ability to just kind of shake that off and go back to his purpose of why he was swimming, why he's there. In fact, he's ended up with another tattoo, which he tends to do when he comes back from the Olympics. He's now got purpose tattooed on his body, because that was another key word. Yeah.
But Glen, that word, it gives me goosebumps that you've just said that, because I was just about to say to you, with the Gazing Red2Blue tools, it keeps people on task. It keeps them having a reason.
Yeah.
It keeps them having a goal. It keeps them intentional. And if they've done the work, like it sounds, Elijah did it with you, and your time and dedication and is just incredible. So well done on that silver. He went for the silver and you definitely were part of that. So congratulations on that. And also congratulations on assisting him in that switching off, moving on to the next thing. I just think that's fantastic. And if you're working with teams, for example, or up and coming athletes where winning is possibly not a possibility, if they're having small victories and are intentionally trying to achieve those small victories. Earlier on, you spoke about, you said it was so much more than just the skill. It's about, well, you didn't say, but you meant, I think you meant it's like developing the whole athlete and the side effects that it has. So if you're achieving small victories along the way, it's building your self-confidence. It's building your belief that I can do it, and starts helping you climb the ladder. And I think that is just, it's such a beautiful tool that can help anybody at any stage. Your story is beautiful. And I think we're going to save my story for the next podcast on Julia Vincent, who was the first South African to get into a diving final, 3-meter diving final. So we will save that podcast for the next time. Glen, thank you so much. I appreciate your beautiful story and your passion. It's just, I love the way you tell the story. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Joe.
Please be advised that this podcast discusses topics related to mental well-being, personal experiences, and societal issues. The views and opinions expressed by the host and the guests are personal and may not reflect the views of everyone in the community. While we aim to inspire and support, please remember that individual experiences with mental health and sports can vary significantly. If you or someone you know is facing challenges related to mental health or requires support, we strongly encourage seeking professional help. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope you find motivation and encouragement in our conversations.